So here in Utah, a lot of families like to appear to look perfect. It's not uncommon to have beautiful family photos hung up on the wall, very large, and photos of kids doing incredible activities and incredible things. But as I've learned growing up, there's a lot of cracks in these facades, and a lot of people don't want to talk about these things. And a lot of families want to create the appearance of perfection when behind the scenes there's a lot of trauma, turmoil, difficulties going on. And I'm really honored to have on the show today my second cousin, Peggy Ayers, and her husband, Steve. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys.
Thanks, Richard. It's so great to be with you.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your courage in coming forward. As you might know, my mom came forward and wrote a book with her mother about her bulimia, anorexia, her bipolar disorder. And I think that is pretty uncommon. A lot of people do just want to maintain that facade. And is that something you ever tried to do when you were going through all these turmoils with your kid?
Trying to come
just
out with...
just not let people know what was going on?
For sure. I'll never forget, we were in the heat of just a lot of suicide ideation, and Steve and I would take walks around the block, and I think we were approached 3-4 different times by 2 different women that knew us and kind of knew privately what was going on, and they're like, you really use a family support meeting in the addiction recovery program with our faith, and just thinking we don't want anyone to know about it. And finally we were just so desperate that we went to the furthest away meeting we could up by the zoo. We live in Mill Creek, and lo and behold, we walk in, and this cute Mary Winters, who was in our neighborhood and our faith community, was the leader, one of the group leaders, missionaries, and we thought, okay, the walls are coming down. And I think we cried through the whole meeting, and it was then that we just surrendered. Like, we cannot run and hide and pretend anymore.
Yeah.
It's killing us.
Yeah.
We hit rock bottom as well as watching our children start to hit rock bottom.
Yeah. And when you did finally surrender to the idea that you're not going to be hiding it, was that a relief?
Very much so. I mean, Peggy's very open about her emotions. I'm not so much, so it was really hard for me to talk about it openly and to admit that, there's an issue or a problem there. But as we've learned and grown through all this whole process, is that nobody's safe from problems, like you had mentioned, and you find that as you talk more and share more, you find you have a lot more in common, and you have a community around you that can actually start supporting you through it all. And that was eye-opening for me. It's still hard for me to talk about it sometimes, but I know that in doing it, being able to share those experiences, it frees you from that kind of isolation, the kind of your box that you kind of go into. And that's generally how I used to deal with a lot of stress, is just kind of retreat into my little world and not want to face reality. But yeah, we have a lot in common with a lot of everybody. Like I said, everybody has stuff.
Yeah, and I know how that feels. Like I think we probably men more so than women just have a natural shell, and we just feel like we can retreat into that.
Yeah. And
we can find a way to kind of block out all these feelings and emotions about the world collapsing in on us. And and I think it is a big relief when you finally realize, let's just talk about these things and bring them open. So, but yeah, if you don't mind, let's go back to the beginning of your family and how you decided that you were going to go a different route than IVF or another way to when you realized you couldn't have kids. What was that? How did that journey go about?
Well, Steve and I met as sophomores at Skyline, and kind of dated here and there, and then kind of did our own thing for a couple years. And we're both the 7th child. He's 7 and 8, and I'm 7 of 7, the bottom. So we both wanted big families and thought we would go that direction. And I went through one hard, really pregnancy, a molar pregnancy that turned cancerous, and it was pretty hard. And then someone approached us at one of our church meetings and said, have you thought about adoption? You could have 3 children by the time you do all these treatments, and something just clicked, right?
Yeah. It's like we had exhausted all those other means to that point and said our next step was to go IVF. And that's when he approached us. And at first I had never crossed my mind. But when Peggy said it, and which is a lot of things throughout our relationship, it kind of shocks me at first, but kind of see the wisdom behind it all. And so we just started putting together, we met with an adoption agency, started putting our portfolio together to start, that you can send out to birth moms, and it was a little bit of a roller coaster in and of itself too.
Yeah. Did you go through the adoption classes?
Yes, we did. I mean, if you can count them that. I feel like there were a couple down off of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a little easier. Yeah. We took the foster, Utah foster route, but yeah, we have that in common with you and adopting kids, and so it clicked that this was the right path.
Our babies were going to come this way. We feel like they were meant to be, and meeting the birth moms, incredible women.
Yeah.
Yeah, very.
And so did you know that the birth moms were on drugs and using while they were pregnant or anything like that?
So our first child, Luke, I always want to honor our birth moms. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry. She chose us around 6 months, when she was 6 months pregnant, and she was doing drug tests, whatnot, and the husband, the father, had a background, and I won't go too much into that. I want to respect their history, but when Luke was born, I was able to see both our babies be born. It was such an honor and pleasure, and but then we did have a 3.5-year custody battle with Luke, with the birth father, after fathering 7 children. I think can sometimes be a little bit of a power play with the mom. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak for him. So then we had one fallout between. The morning of, we were going to go pick little. Yeah,
they had called us that morning and said, "Be here at 10 to pick the baby up." And it's such a hard thing on both the birth parent side and also on the adoptive parent side, and it's painful all the way around. They decided to keep the baby. But to us, it felt like a death because we had prepared ourselves emotionally. And they say, don't prepare yourself. Don't go buy a bunch of stuff because it's going to hurt if they ultimately choose to keep the baby. And they did. So, I mean, in hindsight, wish them the best and hope everything goes well for them. I mean, that was their decision they made. And then we just had to move on.
Carry on.
Go to the next one.
Then our next one came along, and it was just beautiful, and
everything fell into place with her.
We feel like after you look back and go, okay, that baby wasn't meant to be ours. That's okay. Bless that family. So, you just kind of hope for the best, and that your love will cover any of those possible future abandonment feelings or whatnot, and especially getting them from birth, because I had worked as a youth tracker with foster children and had seen when they come into the system with all that trauma, what can happen in beautiful families that have all the hopes in the world, yet they have this trauma coming in, and all that goes along with it. What we've learned is even in utero, there's a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And there's background for both of them that I won't go into, but it kind of surfaced later on in life.
Yeah, I think that's good to know when you're getting into something like this. And it's every kid, I think, kind of comes out as a package, and you don't know quite what you're going to get until you get down to the bottom of that package, and you're never going to know really until maybe puberty, maybe even after puberty. But talk about the first time you realize this is going to be kind of a rocky road. This is not going to be simple or easy.
It seemed like everything early on, through kind of their early ages, everything seemed to like didn't seem like there were any issues at all. We did all of the right things that we were supposed to do, like what we thought we were supposed to do, and I think sometimes that ended up being down the road one of the bigger detriments in the whole process is this: we kind of create these ideals and expectations, and where we think what we think will be the process that we go through, and realizing that sometimes those struggles are the things that actually help and build us along the way and help us become who we're meant to be. And I know that was the case with me. So we didn't really, as I was growing up, but we didn't really see a whole lot when they were super young, as far as any like abandonment issues or stuff like that. I mean,
Can we show this picture, Jack, on my screen? So this is when, how old are your kids in this?
That is, I believe, Luke's senior year,
Yeah.
and
So he had been,
Grace, Newt, formerly Grace, would have been maybe a junior high.
14, 15. Yeah,
Mhm.
Luke was about 17, 18.
Okay. So
Yeah.
throughout this period, everything was pretty much.
Well,
No, no,
not
no.
that picture.
No.
The picture looks nice, like you were
You're
saying.
right.
You put the facade on, but there's a lot of stuff going on way before that. Like
Right.
probably about 13, 14.
Yeah, 13, 14. Luke had gotten his Eagle at 13. Dad had been Scoutmaster, 11-year-old leader, overachiever, getting Friday homework done on Monday. And we had a teacher warn us that, Luke is just, he really worried and has this anxiety, and he's going to break at some point, possibly. And I had childhood trauma from a pediatrician, sexual abuse as a child, and I prided myself that I didn't pass that on. But I believe that any kind of abuse, whether it's sexual, physical, emotional, it's about control. And I was a very controlling mother. And so I remember coming home after that parent-teacher conference, I remember he was in 6th grade and just ripping down all of if you do this perfect for 5 days, if you do this perfect. But that mentality was already in him, trying to please. And we had seen a little bit of reactive attachment disorder where almost the more I tried to love on him, the more Steve would notice. He kind of does it more with you, Peggy, than not.
And we were pretty open with them throughout the whole process. We're like, we don't want to be that idea when you get to 2021, you find out you were adopted. So we were pretty open about it, and sometimes I've gone back, could that have been different? But I think it's meant to be how it was supposed to be. But so we were pretty open about it. So I think that's when I think they started questioning, so what would it have been like with my birth parents, or those types of things? Why did they not keep me? I think that's where some of the doubts started to set in, and it's that 14, 13 age when they're all trying to figure out who they are in the world, and it's such a mess in junior high, and friends and girls and or boyfriends, girlfriends, and it's just, that's when it really started coming out. And I remember, and I have nothing against this, it kind of bothered me for a while, that I think the school district was doing the best that they could, and they had a class to talk about this suicide ideation and what kids do, and they brought up cutting, and Luke had never done it before, but they said that kids that are struggling sometimes will cut or do drugs or something like that. So in my mind, it kind of planted a seed in his. He's like, well, I'm feeling these emotions, he's feeling these anxieties, this abandonment, then I must need to do it. Because when we found out he was doing it, I'm like, how did you even know about that? And he's like, well, they talked about it in school. So it's like, I don't blame the school. I think everyone's trying to do their best to try to educate and understand.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it kind of put some thoughts into his head. And of course, he's accountable for his own things. But it's just hard to. And it's the same with drugs. I mean, it's easy to self-medicate with anything now. But
as far as academics were going and overall
he was
behavior,
doing pretty well
really
until
well.
I don't know what that age around 14, if it's that insecurity, but Luke was on top of his things. It wasn't till around senior year that we started seeing. I think some kids, possibly both of our children are on that autism spectrum where they're both really smart in certain scholastic areas, but socially struggle. And so what do? You hear about liquid courage, and then people don't think the marijuana is that bad. And I'll tell you right now, I just took an abnormal psychology class, and it is the number one reason young men especially are admitted to psych units.
Oh, man.
And he's been in 20-plus psych units
I wanted to do a whole podcast about that because we had on staff during COVID 2 people who were using medicinal marijuana as what they thought was medicine to calm them down. They both ended up in psych wards on the same week. They were working for us. And I didn't want to say anything because at the time they were in recovery. But I thought this whole idea that smoking or consuming huge milligram dosages of marijuana is going to calm you down.
It might at first, Rich, and then later you're hooked.
Yeah,
and it's their
but
oxygen.
I've witnessed a lot of psychotic breakdowns, and one in my more immediate family, and I just think there's got to be so many. Those cautionary tales need to be told.
Well, Steve and I have been in addiction meetings for 9 years with our faith a congregation, and one of our facilitators on Tuesday night, he was in addiction for 29 years, and I'll never forget hearing him talk. He thought he was dead for 4 years because of psychosis and marijuana and different heavier drugs, but he talks about marijuana being, how do you boil a frog? You slowly turn up that hot water. And he just sent us an article this morning, didn't he, where he had 4 underground marijuana grows. Well, he had some in Salt Lake and down in California. And
that's the hard part, though, is the society says it's safe.
Promotes it.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
There's a really common attitude out there where a lot of people think it's a cure-all. A lot of people think it's, I'm going to get over it. This is instead of taking antidepressants. Makes me feel so much better. I can function. Whereas the people observing that person are just like, dude, you're at home like
checked out
all day. You're not functioning. And it's like they don't have awareness of their own situation.
They're in another zip code.
Yeah.
I'll never forget Luke. I have been at almost every one of he's had health challenges. So, 6th grade, we had kidney issues, whatnot. And it was a few years ago, and he had just gotten out of an operation. He had something going on at either was his nose or on his neck. And he wanted to take a shower and another shower. And I have a brother that's a GI doc in Idaho Falls, and he's like, Peggy, I walked in on a patient in the hospital that was in the shower. I didn't know they had baths there. And what it is that marijuana irritates your stomach. And taking baths and showers is the only way to release it. And he wanted to go home, and I'm like, Luke, your vitals don't look good. We need to keep you here. And that I saw that need. It was like his oxygen. I got to get home, Mom. And the showering after the showering. So if your child is showering and bathing, be aware. If their stomach's hurting, they're going to the ER. They're seeing it over and over and over.
Wow.
It's crazy.
And so he was basically addicted to marijuana. Was it in 14 years old or something like that?
I don't know if it quite started then. I think he really wanted to be, and that's what we have a term in that we've heard a lot is you don't become sober, you become connected. So it's usually these cutie pie, soft-hearted kids that might be on the spectrum a little bit that struggle socially that I just want to fit in. So, okay, I'll try it. Oh, my buddy thinks I'm cool with that. Or, boy, that really helped my anxiety go down in a social setting. Where you don't realize it's not the marijuana of the 60s. It's synthetic. You need it more and more, and you're getting it off the street, and you don't know what is in there. Is it laced with fentanyl? Is it whatnot? And
the potency is unbelievable.
Yeah, and it is
the vaping is just as dangerous.
Laced with some kind of other drug. I've heard that a lot, and the complications happen from when there's other drugs mixed in with it. And it's and I have cousins who actively use from the black market because the black market's so much cheaper, and I'm just like, dude, seriously, you don't know what you're getting.
No.
And I think the juice that they put in the vaping things is, if you're ordering it off some random website, it's like, what are you putting in your body? It's just if you're gonna do it, control the dosage first of all. Get the medical marijuana card, I suppose, but I'd say don't do it unless you're absolutely certain it's helping you and the people around you are saying it's helping you.
We've seen that marijuana card. I mean, it has literally taken a child that got his eagle at 13, one of the hardest workers, so smart, and is now living with birth dad in a trailer.
He's been in and out of homeless shelters. Yeah,
20
multiple
different psych
ERs.
units. And the hard thing is we will try to say, when you use, you want to take your life. And he's tried over 6 different times. And that's just what we've known. And so it's just that trap of, here, alcohol's the same. Calms you down a little bit, and then later it makes you more anxious and all those things that come with it. And Steve will say it's the only drug you have to...
Oh yeah, alcohol's the only drug you have to have an excuse why you're not using it.
Yeah. And our same facilitator, Shiloh's like, if alcohol was out now, it wouldn't be legal. And that's a whole nother topic. But you see people's lives, if it's not maintained. But not to put all the focus on our kiddos, we've had our own addictions, and we've gone through rebellious times and self-medicated, and that's the beautiful part, is we see the good in in our babies. We call them our babies. They're 27 and 23. But we know that these children were meant to be ours.
Yeah.
I would tell our children, we would give our lives for you. The hardest part is putting down the boundary. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, I'm not at war with you. I'm at war with what's trying to kill you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See the sin, not the sinner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, this whole process we've been through, because on this family support program that Peggy's talking about, and I think you mentioned it earlier too, that we can't control, we have zero control. Mm-hmm. We think we have this perceived control, and we want to control. And that's the hard part too, is being a parent, because as little kids, you are their life. They can't exist without you. You have to feed them, everything. And then as they become older, and it's so hard to pull back and not to exercise that control and allow them to make their decisions and where they can go with it. And so we've really had to pull back and work on ourselves and work on our own relationship, work on our own place, be at peace with ourselves, kind of slay our own demons in our past and be comfortable with those, and be in a place where we can be for when and if those windows open for them, we can be there more fully for them.
Yeah.
Instead of creating, because our own animosity, our own anxieties can, a lot of times that's what it was, is we were fighting. Because like Peggy said, in high school, I found alcohol to be a way for me, because I have a lot of anxiety and super shy, and kind of gave me that courage, but it became a problem for me. Luckily, I was able to get out of it. But so I see that in me, and so, but I'd never, honestly, I wouldn't, until a few years ago, I would never have talked about that to anybody.
Really?
Same thing,
Yeah.
and it's like, it's so dumb, because that experience I had at that stage in my life was one of the building foundations for me to finding out who I am and where I want to go in life. So I think healing our own past has been a big piece to that. And so it's, in a weird way, it's kind of a blessing to have gone through what we've gone through with our kids, because it's helped us really look into our own selves and see where we're at.
Well, you're focusing on what you do have control over.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you have control over your own self and your own life. And I think, like you said, you want to control. You want to be the decision maker. But as we say a lot in our household, it's like, she's going to make her own decisions. It's her life. Abby, you can do this if you want to, but this is going to be the consequence. And that is one of the most difficult things, I think, is to have this heart where you're able to surrender. And was that something that you didn't have in the beginning, that you were able to develop over time?
Yeah, for sure.
Can you imagine a video on us at the beginning? There was a lot of yelling, threatening, bribing.
Lots of threats.
Because, like Steve said, I think their wounds that are unhealed bump up against yours. And so you realize you've got to work on your recovery. And it really made me face a lot of my own demons. And Steve, we've done firesides. We've gone around and shared about our pasts. And because we think, okay, hopefully our children, if we're facing ours, then one day they might have the courage to face theirs. Because they're incredible human beings. Absolutely. I mean, I look up to our kids and our kiddos. I feel like they are our greatest teachers.
Yeah.
At the carrot that helps us become better people.
Yeah.
And so when you try to handle the stress and anxiety of what your kids are going through? Because I know a lot of people watching probably have the same trials and problems. How do you escape those feelings and that anxiety? How do you handle it?
I think our journey, and I mean, I'm open to a lot of different faiths and Christian beliefs and stuff, but I think being able to take a step back and see the big picture, why we're here, what's the purpose of us being here, and and a lot of it is for our own growth and for our own working through our own thing. So it's kind of it's more for me, it's been more like a spiritual thing, and kind of taking a step back, recognizing God in my life and in the lives of my children and Peggy and our relationship, and that there's a much bigger picture to all of this, and understanding that this whole thing is a process of helping us become our best forms of ourselves with the challenges that we face on the earth here, that has helped me a ton. And so, but that's where I get in trouble, is when I get my tunnel vision, my hyper focus on the one thing. So for me, taking a step back, regrounding myself, going up in the mountains a lot. Mountain biking is my place, my second church, or maybe my first church, but
yeah.
But being away and that whole grounding thing, and we've learned so much about ourselves and just how to focus. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I touched on my abuse as a child, and it came out, being promiscuous in high school, and then when we got married, I felt very suicidal, and I didn't know why. But I realized and we learn this in addiction, that whether it's trauma is unhealed or you go on even prescribed meds. I was put on meds at 12, 13. We're having an emotion. Throw the meds, the Prozacs, all that, which it works for some people, makes me more crazy. I can't be on any of that stuff. But when we got married, Steve was the kindest, sweetest husband ever, never forced anything, but just that intimacy popped open my abuse as a child from my pediatrician, and I was suicidal for 12 years. And I'll never forget, Richard, we were in one of our church meetings and seeing a person reaching out for Christ's hem and thinking, I'm as important as that person, aren't I? Aren't we all equal? And that started my faith journey, and it wasn't easy. I received blessings from some of our church leaders, and I was like, I'm willing to stand on my head for 10 years if I can become a functioning mother. That's all I've ever wanted to be. And I had nannies and all these things. Well, that crisis, that, period of getting to know my Savior, Jesus Christ, is absolutely back then in my 20s and 30s, going through all the trauma, realizing that little thing I never dealt with because no one would talk about it. And we didn't know because he was a family friend and was under a diagnosis. Uncovering that and then finding the Savior, he is the true source of healing. And we see that in our meetings. They'll say, AA got me sober, but a faith-based program, giving that pain and that anguish to someone who we believe can consecrate all that pain, that's the true healer. So for me, the Savior, going to my meetings, surrendering that to him, he is the only way. I've made it through the countless sleepless nights. I remember one night seeing our son walk out and just wondering if we would have the cops that night come tell us that he's gone. And just praying and just feeling wrapped in his love of, I've got you. And another time he was homeless down in St. George, and thinking, how can I be in this warm bed with a pillow when my son is in some just dug out? We saw him this last Thanksgiving, and if you want to gut yourself, drive up to see your child with everything on their back. It's gut-wrenching. But the thought was, Peggy, I helped create this world. No one is homeless with me. And so, and also feeding into, we, not only with our 12-step and family support meetings, but Steve got a hold of Preston Cochran with the Other Side Village, and we did a tour and toured through the academy as well. And we're like, however we can be involved. And my day job, I'm a hospice chaplain, and so they, that's been really neat to be associated, where maybe our children may not be ready for that recovery, but then we've seen the Lord place us in these vineyards, as Joseph Graney would call it, the nethermost part, to serve those that are ready for that recovery.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good transition. And one of the lessons that so stuck out in my mind when we were going through the foster care training was they give you all these lessons on how you prepare, like the different traumas that they've dealt with, that they're going to hoard food, they're going to wet their beds, they're going to wake up in the middle of the night screaming, and we're like, okay, check, we learned the lesson. But then there's a lesson at the end called flip the script. And the idea is you are kind of thinking these children you've adopted whose parents couldn't keep them are going to feel gratitude toward you. And they're going to somehow be like, oh, I'm so happy you adopted us and gave us this great life. But you got to flip that and understand it from their perspective. The way they look at it is, why couldn't my bio father and mom take care of me? What happened? Maybe I gotta forgive them. Maybe I gotta try to live with them. And of course, as adoptive parents, you never think of it in those terms.
No.
And then that stuck with me so strongly, because I was like, and I want to do this because I want to feel like a good person. But ultimately, if I go down to the core of why I want to do it, I want my life to have meaning and purpose and value. And I'm using this child to provide that meaning, purpose, and value. And really, that kid, without that kid, what do I have in my life?
Exactly.
And so flipping it and thinking about the whole situation from that child's point of view helps you to understand what it is you're actually tackling and taking on. Because I think very often we just don't feel like good people. We're yelling, we're like screaming sometimes, we're losing our shit. It's like nothing's working.
Right.
And then the only thing you can do is, please, God, please
intervene.
Show me the way. We need your Holy Spirit here.
Yes.
And I hope you can, like you said, if I can just touch your hem and have a little bit of help, please. And I think most people don't understand that if they haven't had kids. And so I think your decision to go through this and realize you were chosen for this responsibility is really the way you get grounded in it.
And
thanks for saying that.
That even goes back I believe in a premortal life, that possibly, what if we were all up there the same age and thought, okay, I'll be the dad, you be the mom. Oh, you know what? I'm going to be the person addicted to substances. And that's going to really teach our family. Or we have a transgender child. I'm going to be this for a while, and then I'm going to choose this, and you're all going to struggle with me. What if they were those valiant spirits that were like, I will take on the harder thing to teach our family patience, kindness, love, boundaries. And we don't agree with everything that, they don't agree with some of our morals, and we don't agree with theirs, but what we do is try to connect on what we do.
Yeah. It's crazy, too, thinking about that, and something that you said, that there's this phrase that always sticks out in my mind, that we can't save, we can't be like the savior for our family or our children. That's only one person, that's Jesus the Savior. He's their Savior for everybody. So letting go, letting him take that lead allows us, and I don't do it well all the time, but allows us to be in a place where we can just love and just trust. Obviously you have to have boundaries and things, but you love and trust and turn it to Jesus and say, okay, you got us, and we're going to find our way through this, and you just keep pushing forward. And the other thing I think is that our story is unique for us, but it's not unique for everybody. And I think everybody has a story, and I think each story is unique, and how you get there through that process. And I think connecting with God and through prayer and faith and understanding that He's going to guide and direct each of us for whatever path it needs to be, or however it needs to look like, for your specific need, your specific family and kids. And so it's not like that's what I always thought, there's like a one size fits all kind of thing, but it's just not that way.
Well, you just made the point that was ultimately I go up to the mouths of my dogs and I just think about stuff and try to decompress it.
Yeah.
So when all the shit's hitting the fan and I'm just up in the mountains, I feel so lucky to be up there. The thing that that always drives me back home is I am not the savior of these kids. Right. I think that is such a great point. You will never be the one, but you are doing this actually not for them, but you're doing it for God.
Right.
Yeah.
And the results have nothing to do with you.
No.
Yeah.
They have to find their own relationship with God.
They do.
They have to have their own relationship with the Savior and be saved. And you are not that.
No.
So to put that burden on yourself, like, I'm somehow going to say, no, you're not. You have to be able to surrender.
And we don't know their timing, Richard. Like the term usurp the Savior's role, I know that I really truly believe I agree to my trials. And they have taught me to be able to sit with people who've been abused sexually, emotionally, whatever that is. We were looking at our wedding picture. I've lost 5 people in that wedding picture. I can sit with people as they're dying, with loved ones that are mourning those. All those things add up and they're consecrated. And I think we don't know what our kids possibly agreed to walk through. And we want to hurry it, like you say, because we want to feel good and here's these kiddos. But we don't know that they might have said, hey, I'm going to go through 3 decades of addiction. And because I'm going to learn on the other end. We've traveled around and spoken with, his name's Moroni de Luna. He's amazing. He was the drug lord of the Spanish culture. And he wouldn't be who he is without those, what would it be, 5 decades of addiction, or 4 decades?
40 years, yeah.
And you can't rob that from someone.
Yeah.
So who are we to think that we get to come in because that's putting us out as parents, keeping us up at night? No, we don't know what they maybe possibly said, okay, let's do this. I want to learn this life mission. Send me for this one. And we're just these stewards getting, Steve and I will crack a joke and we'll say, okay, get the popcorn out. Oh, put some milk duds in. We didn't see that plot twist. Because sometimes you just have to sit back and almost giggle like we could have never imagined
like you're watching a movie.
Yeah, we're just watching the show.
Seeing the scenes play.
I think you're right. I think you have to take that step back and think, I'm an actor in God's play, and He is the director. It's not me.
That's so true.
And I think you have to learn how to diffuse yourself, because if you get too caught up in all of that stuff, and you get too controlling, it's just like, I notice I just want to drink a lot of alcohol.
Okay, there you go.
And it's not.
We all have
it's
our
not
own,
healthy.
Yeah,
and I was doing that during COVID. I was like, man, I just can't wait to have whiskey or beer or whatever's going to help me unwind, because you just get so wound up.
Yeah.
But of course, that's just not unhealthy. But so many people cope in that way. And so it's I love that you're on this program today, because 100,000 people died of accidental drug overdose deaths in 2023. It was a little bit less in 2024. But how many people are willing to talk about it?
No.
Or even who are in the midst of it, just praying for their kid every night that it's not going to happen to them.
You wouldn't believe the calls we get. We just had a really lovely lady. We were up in Idaho for Mother's Day, and my brother started talking about this week-long immersion we did, and they were like, oh, I just had to drop my son off in Boise, 36, homeless, or it was actually her nephew. Would you come talk to my sister? And we had this beautiful 2.5-hour conversation, and just sharing, and what might be his traumas, and we have nothing figured out other than to direct people to their higher power. So if that isn't Jesus for you, if that's the mountains, if that's whatever that looks like, something above the problem that's bigger that you can believe in and hold on to, because otherwise you're in the fetal position in your closet just thinking, these children are everything. Our hearts are breaking watching them literally walk into a train. It's like a slow death. Like with cancer or diabetes, you're getting that, oh, so sorry that's happening. Where we're behind the scenes when our child just his organs, I remember running down in the middle of the winter, and Luke was found, the so-called friends that they use with locked him out. And it's just brutal winter night, and watching his vitals dip down. And it was just so hard. And and we do have family members. Our family members are amazing that support us. But a lot of times it looks like, well, what did Peggy and Steve do? Well, you know what? We did the scripture study. We did the family night.
The church, the everything. Yeah.
We did it all.
Yeah.
And so the 3 C's, you didn't create it, you can't control it, you can't change it. So once you let go of that and understand, people are going to judge. And all we can do, because I'll tell you, the dark side just doesn't want our children. He wants Steve and I.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
to destroy everybody.
And it can, I'll never forget, our friend Paul said, you better get right with you and Steve, because this will destroy your marriage. Because you have the good cop, bad cop. How I was raised, I was super enabled, and I love my mom, but I worked her good. Steve might have had a different type of childhood, and those bump up when you're trying to manage a child in addiction and not choosing, and it can just put a wedge. Each time in the psych units, you could see us out there, and I think guilt, I've seen this in grief work, we will blame ourselves or another person as a form of control of what feels out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So you're sitting there and you're just like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if we wouldn't have had that conversation last night, he wouldn't have attempted, or if you would have been harder on him or taught him earlier on.
Yeah.
I just sat with a sweet family member yesterday that her son took his life with a gun, and she told me that her husband had gotten in an argument with him the night before, and he turned to her and said, do you want to divorce me? After he had taken his life, thinking he was the reason. And we back that up. Okay, when did he write the suicide note? When, we all have that free agency. And that's the beautiful part, if you believe in that we can't take that away from anyone.
Yeah.
And we can't change their choices. So a lot of us have been through really hard things and don't choose to attempt suicide, and other people do. And we just can't control any of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I you mentioned Joseph Grenny, and you sent me a clip of him giving a presentation about his family, and he said he was hoping his sons would begin, have these incredible academic achievements and valedictorian, and instead he's getting mugshots.
Mm-hmm.
And he says it's like after the mugshots keep piling up and the kids are in jail and prison, and it's just, I think it's actually extremely refreshing to hear somebody, especially of the LDS faith, talking about these unrealized expectations they had for their kids. Do you feel like the faith very often wants people to live up to an unrealistic standard?
I've had a lot of thoughts about that. And Joseph Grenny talks about that. He says the pamphlet's a lie.
Yeah, the pamphlet's a lie. That's a great.
That was like so
comment.
liberating for us.
Yeah.
And I think it's more people.
Cultural.
It's a cultural thing, that because I think the faith says that we understand the whole purpose of this life, but I think culturally we get stuck in this mindset that if we do everything that's supposed to happen, it'll all be perfect.
Yeah.
But again, going back to that, it's not meant to be perfect. I mean, we're meant to have all of these challenges, and there's tremendous growth that happens. It sucks when you're in it, but there's tremendous growth. Just like with anything that we face, the failures in our lives are the things that help build us. I mean, how many times you hear like people that are super successful in business, they talk about their failures are what made them.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the same thing, but I think it's more of a cultural thing than maybe the faith thing, because we see it in other religions too. That
you could say it's evangelical. It's just part of probably being looking and appearing like a good Christian family.
Yeah.
Is that you should have this appearance of perfect children and this great family and this wonderful home and everything is just right. And you know, that, I mean, that's kind of what I grew up in, with my Thane side of the family. It was a great appearance, but there was a lot of trials and tribulations and turmoil, and my mom was, you know, the center of a lot of that, you know, growing up. But then so was more of my aunts and cousins, and there was always so much going on. And the thing that was liberating to me with the Christian faith, I can say, outside of the LDS Church, is knowing that you are by nature are sinful, and you only have redemption through Jesus.
Right.
Like, there's nothing you can do yourself that is going to redeem your bad behavior or your sinful nature. That you cannot do it. You just can't. Right. And you're built with a God-sized hole in your heart, and if you don't give up to God, you're going to fill that hole with something.
Exactly.
And were your kids not receptive to those ideas, or do you think they are and just not?
I remember our youngest, Grace, formerly Grace, you know, Mom calling me out on, those shorts are too short, or why are you tanning? Like, they had this innate connection to Jesus. Luke was amazing. He would bear his testimony, and really good kids. I think that the dark side, whatever you want to refer it to, I think if they can detach you from your self-worth of who you truly are, that you are a divine child of God, that is the quickest way to detach you from ever even feeling that you were precious to God. So I see it in that respects, that as you kind of go away from the light,
where the drug or the
yes.
peer influence makes you not believe you're a child of God.
You're numbing yourself, you're numbing your spirit, and you don't feel those connections up to heaven.
Yeah.
You know, I think the dark side knows Steve's not going to go out and rob a bank. I'm not going to blah, blah, blah. But if I could just slowly, like we talked about the frog, hey, just try this for a little bit. And it attaches you from your true identity. And that's what we'll send text to our kids or pictures, and they may not like it, but seeing that light in their eyes, and that's the beautiful part we've seen in recovery, is you take away the substances and start digging in and doing those inventories and healing that unhealed trauma, that light comes back.
Yeah.
And they start remembering their true worth. So whatever faith tradition you believe in, I think the principles are good. It's maybe the culture or what we attach to it and give power to. But I think Jesus is in their stories.
Well, you have this thing, you brought your worth to earth.
Yeah. You don't gain it here. Worthiness might be a little different, but I tell our kids, you brought your worth to earth. It's like a dollar bill. You can scrunch that thing up. It doesn't change that value.
So funny story that with our daughter, that when she was in like a Sunday school class, they were asking, how are you trying to be more like Jesus? And she said this funny thing about Peggy. She's like, I'm trying to help my mom from saying bad words.
Not say bad words, and I'm attacking Satan. I'm like, she doesn't even let me say darn. These kids were just lights, and they still are. I feel like they're in their trauma closets, and when it's time, and that's the thing, is we don't know. And if we keep trying to save him, enable him, you are usurping the Savior's role. Because I remember my parents wanted to come in, and they were amazing. But it took me getting to that rock bottom, seeing that picture, and saying, I want what that person has. And then we've heard story after story where they've got 50-year sentence ahead of them, these cutie pies that have felons or whatnot, and they're in for life, and they get on their knees in prison. And they just say, God, where are you? And the next day they're able to go to the Other Side Academy, you know, talking to the judge and writing that letter. What they've realized is he has been there on their path the entire time, but he respects their agency. He is not going to come in and overturn that. It's us who have to turn to him.
I think going back to your question, though, is that I don't think anything you do when they're young is in vain. I mean, you're trying to give them these opportunities. But what's interesting, what Peggy said, is almost we had so many people at Tulsa share their stories, and even at the Other Side Village, and even in our meetings, that there's a point when you're at your rock bottom where you remember things, and that's what I think, and then having that at some point there's a remembrance that there was something that you once felt, and then that's what they always fall back on, and then from that point they can start building, and whatever that rock bottom is. There's a guy at Tosa that said, Peggy asked him, where was your rock bottom? He's like, I hit my rock bottom when I stopped digging and started to climb out. Because we're like, we have to have hit rock bottom with our kids.
Everyone else, haven't you hit rock bottom yet? And we're like, dude, it must be a black hole. But it's really got to be our children's decision when that is.
Uh-huh.
The beauty, too, is no one's ever too far gone.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, people that have been decades in that world come back and are just powerhouses.
This woman, Jackie Tress, I don't know if you met her at the... She started using when she was, I believe, 12 or 13 with her mother. Mm-hmm. And she was from New Jersey, and she, I believe, came out to Las Vegas, but she shows me these mug shots, one after another, and she looks worse and worse and worse. And her eyes are sunken in, and her cheeks are sunken in, and she's lost her teeth, and she looks like on death's door. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then she said she had this pull, like to go to others. She heard about it. She knew that's where she had to be, and it's like it pulled her in.
Exactly.
And she, day one, she's like, I knew that's where I was supposed to be. I did not want to be in prison anymore. Mm-mm. I knew prison wasn't it. I needed to totally transform my whole self. And that's what they offer in that. And it's, the thing that bothers me is like, why is that word of whole person change, complete transformation, it taking 30 months, why isn't that getting out to all these other recovery and treatment programs? I mean, how come we still keep doing it this same old way? We're 90-day program. Let's hope and pray that 90 days is going to work. Why aren't they emulating the TOSA model?
It's a good question. I mean, we felt the same thing. We've been through probably 20 different rehabs trying to resolve it for our kids, but and none of them. I mean, they're all. I mean, each of them, and we learned a lot from TOSA. Some of them said that, there are good things that happen in some of these programs, and people sometimes can find their sobriety, but the vast majority, it's like 5% success rate.
Yeah.
I mean, it just blows my mind. And some of them were wanting like $40,000 a month.
Yeah.
And we were at that point where we're like, do we mortgage our house? And we did at one point
Did you?
For some of it. But luckily, this person we've talked about, his name's Moroni, said, you have to stop because he's not going to change till he's ready. And it's not going to matter what kind of program he's at. When he's ready, he's ready. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, don't spend any more money on doing this because.
And would you tell other parents the same thing? Just do not even begin to do that.
Exactly. I mean, you can't, like we talked about, you can't solve it. And to each, this is where I want to be careful because everybody's situation is unique. And Peggy and I had to get to a point where our boundary had to come back further and further and further until the point now where, again, Mo at TOSA, or at the other side village, said to us, he's like, $5 would have kept me on the street. Mm-hmm. And we're like, wow, because we're like, we would keep sending him money every so often. So it's scary to let go.
It's terrifying.
And not to have that connection, not to have some sort of control. I think it's more on our side, and we want to control something. We feel like we're giving them something that's going to help them, but realizing you're actually causing the problem more. I mean, you're allowing them to stay in there. You're giving them that $5 a day, even like less. Some of us said $3 a day, and you think that, and then they, giving them food sometimes. They bargain for food. They bargain for everything. You can trade drugs for food or other clothing. I mean, everything's like a bargain for them, and so it's hard to know where that line is. Mm-hmm. And for each family, it's going to be different. And for us, has gotten to this point where we had to just set a really firm boundary and said we can't support you anymore. But we're here when you're ready.
Yeah, and I think the parable of the prodigal son is great in the Bible.
Yeah.
Relating to that, you got to let go completely. Like, okay, he's gone away. If he comes back, clean, sober, let's butcher the fatted calf and let's have a nice welcoming back party.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that I think I struggled with. I've interviewed dozens and dozens of homeless people and the Other Side Academy folks, I think the compassion side of things, of course, they have the very best of intentions. I think, of course, the open heart of giving and love is going to make a difference in people seeing that there's a community out there who wants to help. However, there's no rock bottom if you're providing air mattress and tent and heating equipment and food and everything that they possibly need to enable them to continue on this terrible addiction journey.
Well,
And
I think too, I mean, we've done all that. I remember packing up Luke's car. He was coming out of one of the psych units, and they put him in a hotel up by the airport, and I packed up his car with peanut butter sandwiches and sleeping bags. And there's this part in, if they die, can I live with myself? And I'll never forget, we asked this at our immersion, and someone said, yes, you can, if you told the truth. And but it's so much about us. You realize as parents how sick you are, and you're caught up in it. I'll never forget when the moment came for me. I started feeling like I didn't want to live, because you're watching your child ER after ER, and they're just, please God, come home. And I want to have an extension of the prodigal son story. Where is it when they want to come home and you can't let them come home yet?
yeah.
I want to run and bring them home. But the Lord's saying, Peggy, no. And I'll never forget just this imagery of my child's in this cave, and he's got fires and snakes, meaning the drugs and whatnot. And I keep going in trying to get him out. And I'm getting bitten, and I'm getting burned. And I wrote him a letter, and I said, we love you. I will be outside this cave. But this is destroying me and your dad. And I'll hear frequently, or just this thought will come, Peggy, you and Steve are the carrot. If you keep enabling this, he won't have the motivation to get out. We love these children. It kills us every day. We're praying, please wrap your angels around our babies. They're everything to us. And give us strength to stay strong, because we are addicted to the enabling. And I wouldn't say that they say 7 or 8, 9 times average of a rehab. I would say each one of those, possibly, they're not in vain. They're learning, and it's chipping away. So I would never tell anyone this program or that program may not work. You don't know.
Yeah.
It's maybe pulling away the trauma a little at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a deep insight, and it's counterintuitive to your maternal instincts
Rips your
and
heart out.
your parental instincts. But we had on the program too a mother and father of a woman who was kind of a new addict, but it's just like grabbed at her by the claws and dragged her down, and she wasn't going to stop, and they blew through their life savings trying to help her, and they finally just had to let go. And she ended up in a tent in downtown Salt Lake City, and there was a guy who was trading drugs for sex, and till she was dead. And it was like they had to come to terms with that. And the only thing that was horrible about it, really horrible, is the guy who traded the drugs for sex carved his name in her arm with a pen and blood, and the cops didn't want to investigate that guy. So there's these predators out there,
Evil.
who find these vulnerable people who are addicts, and I'm like, that should not exist.
No, that's so dark.
That's where it should end, because not only are they enabled out on the streets, but if there's these drug camps with these tents, then there's a place that they can be kept until they basically drop dead. And I think it's just a horrible situation on the streets as well, just because we have these hearts of compassion, we see a tent, okay, at least they got a tent. But they're in the tent because they're using, and they're a tent because they're being enabled. Do you? So do you believe that we got to eliminate all these open air drug scenes and all these tent encampments?
Taken over. It's taken. And in fact, I was at Nordstrom Rack parking lot, and we have the Other Side Village bracelets and whatnot. And there was a guy with his dog, and walking around and when you see a child or a young man that looks like yours, you're just like, let me help him. And I had granola bars, and so I break the rule a lot and enable probably, but I got out my bag of granola bars and went up to him, and I told him about the other side village, and he just, they know, they've been approached and offered these things. It's until the pain of the problem becomes worse than the pain of the solution. Is that how it goes?
The pain of the solution becomes less than the pain of the problem.
Right. Then they won't give in. And, you may look
until the pain of the solution becomes
less than the pain.
Yeah, so that has to become so bad, the pain of the problem has to become so bad that the solution is better than staying in it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a switch that probably goes off. Oh, I'm sleeping in the rain and I'm freezing cold and I'm almost dead. Probably time to call mom, or figure something else out.
Yeah.
And I was medication dependent. It was by a doctor, but I remember thinking, I'm on 9 emotional meds. I'm 200 plus pounds. I'm a zombie. I took state and tennis. I was a runner. Like, where is Peggy underneath this blob? And I had my rock bottom, and that's when I was like, I'm so done. So you may not think you're drug dependent or medication dependent because it's being prescribed by a doctor, but wake up. You might be. Mm-hmm. And you might have those flickers of, like Steve said, those childhood, like, oh my goodness, there was a time I didn't need all this stuff. Mm-hmm. There was a time I was free.
Yeah.
And it pulls you back to whether it's holistic healing or you might need to stay on certain medications. Everyone's chemistry is different. But I think we all can hit our rock bottoms, whether it's prescribed or you are the caregivers or you are the person in addiction.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an incredible story and trial that you've gone through. I've got another photo I want to show of when your kids were, it looks like pretty young.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would say 3 and about 6.
Yeah.
Super
so
cute.
I know that tons of people are going through this. Most families in the United States have been touched by addiction in one way or another, whether it's mom, dad, sister, brother, uncle, cousin. In many ways I've felt it, and I really appreciate you guys just coming on and sharing.
You bet.
Yeah. So what would you recommend to families to connect with other families going through this? Is there any kind of support group or network that exists? There's Al-Anon meetings through the 12-step recoveries. The LDS Faith has created their own. They had permission from the 12 steps to implement more of a faith-based 12-step program. So we've actually been missionaries in the program for 9 years, and they have a family support side, which it's Christian based. It's pretty broad, but the things it teaches you in there is about how to have the right conversations, how to have the right boundaries, how to function better, how to work on yourself, all of these things. So there's that as a really good resource for families. The Al-Anon groups, there's lots. It's funny because they talk about the addiction. People don't become sober; they become connected. So that connection, the community, is so vital and important. Mm-hmm. Even if it's in your own family, having a group of people you can go to talk to. Yeah, it's so important to talk, because I think that's where Satan lies. He wants to keep you down. He wants to keep you inferior. He wants you to have that self-doubt. But the more you're open to talk and have communities around you, then it frees you, it liberates you. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's amazing to me is like the Tosa and the other side of village, their whole thing is built on community. Yeah. They say that's the number one reason why they are successful, is because they have that community of people together, holding each other accountable, working together, having that common goal. And so I don't know however that maybe will look for anybody, but there's lots of resources out there. But the main thing is just have a community around you. Just start talking about it. I don't know. What do you think?
Get into a self-help group. We had a lady find she was had her mom back in Tennessee or somewhere just said, just find a self-help group, a group.
What's John and Kristen's that they do?
Yes, CRAFT is
CRAFT.
amazing. It's an acronym for
USARA. The USARA program has
great resources.
Great
We've done
resources.
those
We've done
programs.
some really good. We've done some really good classes through them. That's really, really good about
USARA, USARA.
USARA.
Yeah.
Okay.
John and Kristen
And they're
Garbett
free.
are incredible. And a lot of online. You can look for online.
Yeah.
But just don't isolate. I just love when someone will come to one of our groups and say, I thought I was alone. Oh, I'm so grateful. Like that woman I was talking about. She just all of a sudden didn't feel like it was her fault that she could come and get it out, because that will just strangle you. It's just...
Well, we were there too.
Yep.
That was us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's when you don't want to confront the reality of the situation was when you isolate more and you think, oh, I'm going to keep this this facade up and
Ignore it.
people are going to believe that everything's okay, but actually everybody sees right through it, it seems. When things are not going well, it's like people see it happen.
I had one more thought too, just as something that Joseph Granny taught us a lot about, is that sometimes you can't help your own family. Go serve somebody else. Go serve somebody that is willing that is on that path to change. That's what saved us so much with becoming involved with the other side, Tosa in the village, that they want change. And so we get that unique opportunity to be around, and you can volunteer time or serving somebody else. It really takes that pain away.
I think that's
what you're
such
feeling.
a great idea. I mean, the reason I began my homeless coverage is the stuff with our foster kids when we first got them. It was so freaking hard. I mean, just if you'd bat your eye, and one of them's choking out the other one,
right?
And we're going to the crisis nursery all the time, and it was so freaking hard. I'm like, why shouldn't I go interview some homeless people and put perspective on things? And then you realize a lot of people have it a whole lot worse than you do. A lot of people have a whole lot more difficult challenges where perhaps they didn't tackle those challenges in the right way. And so you get so much perspective by talking to people about their serious problems. And I think you talked to me yesterday on the phone and you said sometimes you feel like you're down in 200 feet underwater. You're dealing with this serious crap.
Your scuba gear on.
Yeah, and it's actually hard to talk about, like, oh, what are the coolest things to do this weekend?
Surface, fashion, all those things.
Yeah, where can we go eat? And it's like when you get to the depths of life and you get to the depths of problems and serious issues, you start to realize you're actually starting to understand how to mature as a human being, and it's painful, but at the same time you're sharpening up and becoming a different person. And I think you gain that through all these trials, and it's for a reason.
I agree.
Well, we're, leading up to Mother's Day, I don't know if we can touch on this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Steve had talked to Joseph Granny, and he invited us to come do a week-long immersion program at the Other Side Academy. We go each week to the Other Side Village for the Bible study. They've asked to have a female chaplain, or spiritual care rather. I'm just their friend, right, to go and help out with the spiritual team there. But it was such an interesting adventure, going for a week and living under the same roof with no lock on our door, with 125 to 30 people who had felonies. Average arrest was 25 times. And I worked with the women. We were treated as freshmen. On Monday, we got there Sunday night, treated gold stars. We could talk to everyone.
Students didn't know that you were any different than them? Oh,
They did.
Okay.
And
They did, but they were told
Monday morning.
Yeah, Steve and Peggy
treat.
are freshmen. You treat them. They're under the same rules.
Yeah, right out of
Some
prison.
rules we didn't even understand.
Couldn't look at each other, scrubbing toilets, all that. And we started to understand, if you can't, they're all about behaviors, getting a hold of the behaviors, and then they go later into their history. But if you can't obey the little things, how are you going to obey the big things? And I think at 10 years they haven't had a fight or a dirty UA.
Yeah, it's incredible.
But my gift, right before Mother's Day, for me, we just did that one day. It was really hard. I'm like, okay, I'm done being a freshman. We got to move up. I
we
whipped
did too.
out
I mean, the next day we were
sophomores.
out at the
thrift store.
thrift stores, working
Amazing.
the thrift stores.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So you got to do one of the jobs.
Yeah.
We did. That was so fun. But at that point, we could ask their stories because the freshmen, they have rival gangs in there. They don't want people, if this is hard, let's leave. But for me, the biggest payback was hearing, well, tell me your rock bottom, tell me your story. So many of the young men would say, my mom enabled me. I've had to tell my mom, this is a 2.5-year program. I need you to go work on you. Separate from me.
No kidding.
Peggy, I wish my mom and dad or mom, would have cut me off sooner.
Mm-hmm.
She was so much a part of the problem. So going into a Mother's Day, knowing my child's just had to leave his homeless shelter, living with birth dad, thinking I must be the worst mom ever, or, you'll go back into those mindsets because you want to control it. But hearing them over and over saying it was the best thing that my parents did, or my mom or dad, to cut me off.
Wow.
Because it would have prolonged it. So, I don't know, what did you love?
It's interesting. They said that the parents sometimes cause the most problem for the students that are in at TOSA.
Try to come check on them, and they're like,
And they want to, as a parent, it's that innate thing, you want to help, but realizing that this is something that they need for them, and then you need to kind of work on yourself. And but just, I couldn't imagine being in amongst a better group of people.
oh,
Yeah.
I mean, they were so kind, so open, so vulnerable. It was so refreshing being in an environment like that where everything, nobody hides anything. Everybody is just real. Everybody is raw. And on the outside, they may look a little bit hard, but you look at their face, at their eyes, you see the light, you see just these amazing people that are so just trying to better their lives and
and
in
you
a
talk
good way.
about, like, I miss doing those interviews. Like, we had that term of time that we were doing the interviews, and I'm sure we'll do more, but you realize we live in such a world of facades where there's a lot of fakeness and a lot of appearance and a lot of, I'm this and that, but you to break it down and get down to a raw human being is so refreshing. And there is some kind of light that shines through a person who has gone that far and that deep and knows what the fires of hell feel like.
Yeah.
And they've come back up through that. It's just amazing to interact with those kind of people.
And we honestly didn't want to leave. Like, we cried as we left Friday morning and just told them, we love all of you. And they were so open, and they teach them how to rapport and how to be out in the business world. And they would say, Peggy, I've done everything. Steve, I've done everything. And I'm like, I don't care. Oh, you murdered someone? Okay. Well, you're here now. I mean, they wouldn't, but they'd say, we've done everything, almost testing to see. And we just wanted to wrap our arms around them and say, we see the real you. If any of us were put in a drug home where we're getting cocaine in our stocking for Christmas, or we've been this or that, we could be exactly where you're at. None of us are above any of these people's behaviors if we were put in those same situations. Like, it is trauma, trauma, trauma. Almost every single one of them had been abandoned, abused, all those things that then they turn to the substance. Then they're on the substance. Then they're out of their heads. And they're in another zip code and creating these crimes.
Yeah.
They're not the monsters. It's being on those substances that disconnects them from that light.
Yeah. Yeah, well said.
And the way they run their businesses, those enterprises, it's unreal. I mean, it is so well organized, and the customer service, we joke about, like, the feeling you get if you go like to Chick-fil-A, they just go above and beyond, or Disneyland. I mean, that's the kind of people that are out there doing it, and the year round, and they just treat all. I mean, they have they live off their reviews for the moving company, and they have like 5 stars on everything, and just people rave about them.
Yeah, the first profiles I did were of the construction company, which is kind of new. The 2 guys running it, Dylan and Jordan. I go out and watch their crew, and I'm like, where's the guys on their cell phone? Where's the guys taking the smoke breaks?
Right.
Exactly.
Like, most construction crews, more than half the team is just like checked out.
Yeah.
And those guys are all in. They are working so freaking hard, and they're just on the spot. And I think it's like this level of consciousness, like just being conscious and aware of everything that's happening around you, somehow they are able to create and nurture that culture that every business owner would want.
Oh.
And just instead of this, I'm going to be checked out, checking my TikTok feed and Instagram and whatever, take my smoke and vape break. It's like I would love to tap that as a business owner. And I just don't know how to do it. It's like I think Joseph Grenny and Dave DeRocher, Moe, they're all doing it deliberately, but that's their spirit that's being ingrained, and that's their DNA.
So it's incredible to watch.
Chris took us Thursday. Dave went on out of town, and Chris, I can't remember his last name. He was such a great guy. He and Dave are from Delancey Street, and he took us to the warehouse. You could have eaten off of their floor.
Yeah.
My dad worked in the grocery business for 20-odd years. I saw warehouses all my life. I've never seen a cleaner
Organized.
floor. Organized. I mean, you're like, oh, yeah, I trust you with my items in my home and whatnot. If you need a good organization to donate to, the Village and the Academy, absolutely hands down one of the best we've ever seen. And we hopefully feel like family. They feel like family to us, and we love them. And
it was really
life-changing. So grateful for Preston Cochran and
Preston.
Tim Stay. He just got an award from the governor. And they're good-hearted people. That this is the way you channel that compassionate heart. You do it for the whole person change, not just the temporary Band-Aid.
Yeah. Well, great message, guys.
Thanks for having us on. Richard.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah.
Nice to connect, and thanks for sharing your story too.
Good luck with all you're going through too.
Yeah, one day I'll talk more about it, but it is hard to talk about. It's hard to share, and I think you guys are amazing for doing so much of that, because there's so many people living in the shadows and in the tragedy of their lives falling apart and their loved ones death, and it's just I see it, and I see the aftermath, and we see it on the streets of Salt Lake City. It's like time to talk about it.
It is. And if anyone wants to contact us and learn about meetings or whatnot, you're welcome to give out our information. We're happy to help, because we can't do it alone.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. This podcast has been brought to you by Utah Stories, and this is our current issue. Probably by the time this is published, our next issue will come out, and you can go to utahstories.com, subscribe to our free digital newsletter. If you like this content, please give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend. Just subscribe to our free digital newsletter. That's the best way to stay in contact with the voices of local Utah. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.